Hi, Nicola and Kim, how are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So, how are you?
Hello. Very well, thank you.
That's great. So, thank you so much to both of you for joining us, and we are looking forward to have a fabulous session.
Fantastic, thank you. Kim, are you able to just share your screen? We've got just a few slides to run through, and then I'll kick off with some introductions on what we're going to talk about.
Okay, so good luck. Stage is all yours now.
Thank you. So my name is Nicola Yallup, and I have the pleasure of leading the business development and marketing function. And as you'll have heard described, our role is really the national and international promotion of the UK as a place to undertake clinical research. And I recognise that we have quite a diverse audience today, that many of you will be aware of the work of the NIHR and some may not. So in summary, what we do is we support that delivery of vital life-changing research in a range of ways, and that can be through funding, investing in world-class expertise, and also through infrastructure. And we do this by working with patients, with life science companies, with charities, researchers, and clinicians. So Kim and I work for the Clinical Research Network, which is the infrastructure arm of the NIHR. And right now we are seeing sustained public enthusiasm for participating in research. And this is against the backdrop of the pandemic, the successes of the COVID-19 specific trials, and also the continued recovery of the wider UK research portfolio. In 2021 to 2022, the NIHR CRN helped 1,289,937 participants take part in over 4,600 portfolio studies in England. And offering those participation opportunities and recruiting volunteers across the country is vital to increasing diversity in research studies and improving health outcomes in underserved communities. And again, during that period, once again, every NHS trust across England recruited participants to take part in clinical research studies. So today is an opportunity to ideally hear from some of you in the chat on some of the challenges and opportunities that you are noticing, and to share some of the work, just some of the work that the NIHR CRN is doing to support patient engagement in clinical trials from the earliest point possible, making it real and collaborative. And to that end, I'd like to share a short video. It's about 3 minutes long that I feel describes really well the impact and the importance of what we do. Kim.
You can make the most difference with patient involvement by starting to get the patient involved right from the beginning. So when you know that you're going to be doing a study, then bring the patients in right from the beginning. When will we ask for consent for this study? When will we start asking people for information? What kind of information? Get the patients right involved right from the start with every step of the way.
What patient involvement should look like should be that patients are involved from the very, very beginning. And one of the things that we've discussed as a family is that really patients should be being asked, what do you think research should be?
Yes, because they know a lot about the condition because they've had it all their life. So I think they can put their feelings and input about it and see that we could research this part of the condition and then this part. So because I've had a heart condition all my life, I think it would be easiest for me to input some information than just like a researcher who's just finding out all this stuff.
We're living it every day. So to us, we're maybe more sensitive to certain images. We may not want to hear certain words. We might find some things slightly patronising. And when you're living it day to day, you want to be taken seriously.
I also think that patient involvement in research is good practice. It has to be real. It mustn't just be tokenistic, where you're just asking patients at the end of a clinical trial to look over something, so it's just a tick boxing exercise. I think it's really got to be real, it's got to be done together, and it's got to be a really good collaboration between the patient and the clinicians and the doctors.
If we can change some of the things of how it's addressed to to make it more friendly, then I feel that you would get more people taking part, and if more parents take part in studies, then obviously you're going to get better outcomes and the more trials that can go ahead.
For several years, we've been working with pharmaceutical companies to try and encourage early involvement in protocol design. Very recently, we had a pharmaceutical company come to us and they wanted to involve and engage with young people and parents on a particular study. So they came to our group and they looked at the protocol of a potential study. Our young people contributed to that discussion and looked at the outputs, the outcomes of the study and the design, so the practicalities of that study and the information requirements needed for that study to be a success. It was a fantastic opportunity and we've been trying to encourage that for several years. So it's not just at the patient information stage of the design of the research, it's actually at the very beginning where the most influence can be made. It was a great success. I think the pharmaceutical company were really pleased with the feedback and have used that to inform the next stage of the protocol design. And we hope to share that learning and share that good practice with other pharmaceutical companies as a standard of good practice.
So for me, that video really highlights the importance that people place on being involved in the research that affects them, putting patients at the heart of what we do and working with them to shape the way that research design, delivery and outcomes look is what we try to do as an organisation. So if we just take a step back for a moment and look at why are the terms such as patient engagement and involvement, patient voice, why are these trending? I mean, we know that patient-centric trials are geared around patients in their design and execution. We also know that regulators and ethic committees are increasingly asking to see evidence of patient involvement and engagement when those studies are submitted for approval. There are industry-wide codes of conduct, and companies want to support and be seen to support and conduct ethically orientated practice. Trials can then be designed to make sure that the trial outcomes are relevant and meaningful to patients, and to make that participation as convenient as possible for patients. For example, using remote or wearable technologies to reduce clinic visits. We're seeing a growing number of decentralization approaches, and patients are expressing a desire for more flexible ways in which trials are conducted. And ultimately, all of this is designed to improve the quality of research and its relevance to patients and to encourage greater participation. Next slide, please. So there are demonstrable benefits to including patients in clinical development. If we have a little look here at what the data is telling us, bear with me a moment. Thank you. So this is drawn from the Economist Intelligence Unit, who define patient-centric trials as being trials that consider and or include patients in trial design and execution, and have recently undertaken a research project titled The Innovation Imperative, The Future of Drug Development, and this was undertaken in 2018. And it echoes what we're seeing as an organisation, which is a rise in patient-centric design trials and the newfound awareness and engagement by the public of clinical research since the pandemic. And this, together with a number of factors, including regulatory support, is further driving this trend. And this slide shows the geographical areas where patient-centric trials are more prevalent, mostly in the US, followed by the EU, which includes the UK here, of up to 34%. And interestingly, oncology was the leading therapy area for the selected geographies, and neurology was the leading therapy area in other geographies. The report found that patient-centric trials in the selected geographies took on average 50% less time to recruit 100 patients than other geographies. So that was taking around 2.6 months versus 5.3 months. And if we move on to the next slide, you can see that what that actually meant at a therapeutic level was that it took around half as much time to recruit 100 patients in neurology and oncology trials, and rare disease trials took a fifth of the time to recruit patients than non-patient-centered trials in those therapeutic areas. And it may be that this has an overall impact on trial time, making it shorter than the other innovation types that the report was considering, for example, decentralization of trials. and they found that the average trial time for patient-centric trials was 28 months as compared to 30 months for all trials. They also found that drugs developed using patient-centric design were 87% more likely to be launched, as opposed to other trials which were only 63% likely to be launched. So given the positive impact of involving patients in the development of these trials, what barriers do we need to overcome to ensure that it happens? And I don't know if colleagues or participants are interested in popping in some of the challenges perhaps in the chat that you might experience in this area. I'll move on to the next slide to talk about them, but it'd be really interesting to hear from you. There's lots of different areas, but I just want to touch on a few of those challenges. For the public, really, there's that patient perception, that concern, those misconceptions, and a varied understanding about commercially led clinical trials. But the pandemic has raised the public's awareness of clinical trials, but there's still a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about them. For industry and clinicians, key to make sure that you can navigate the regulatory pathway regarding that patient engagement, which can be complex with multiple frameworks and all subject to interpretation. And again, we don't only represent the CRN and that infrastructure, we link in across the whole research ecosystem. So we have companies, whether new or existing, that we can help signpost to the relevant areas to help them through that journey. And the final point that I wanted to pull out here was about finding relevant patients, which can be challenging and can take a lot of time and a lot of resource. So there's a lot to consider, and it can be difficult to get it right. And my colleague Kim is going to talk to us about one of the services that the NIHR CRN introduced in 2018 to help companies do this and to help achieve the overall aims. Kim, over to you.
Thanks very much, Nicola. Good afternoon to everyone. So just to tell you a little bit about the Patient Engagement and Clinical Development Service. The NIHR really set up the Patient Engagement and Clinical Development Service to help companies overcome some of the challenges that Nicola told you about in the previous slide. The primary aim of the service is really to bring patients and life science companies together as early as possible in the clinical development process. So ideally before a study protocol is finalized, so that patients can really help make trial designs as patient-friendly as they can be. The service really offers a standardized industry-wide approach to engaging with patients, and it instills a culture of partnership working between the life science industry organizations and patients themselves. We, the NIHR, are really in a very unique position to be able to broker this relationship as a kind of neutral public sector organization working in close partnership with the NHS. And we have a long history and track record of supporting the life science industry to deliver clinical research in the NHS as well. The service itself was developed in partnership with patients, with clinicians, and with the life science industry. So how did we kind of, what are the kind of things that we did and how did we kind of bridge that gap? So helping companies to overcome the practical and regulatory challenges faced by companies. So as the research arm of the NHS, the NIHR has credibility with those NHS patient and patient organizations. We understand the regulatory framework around patient involvement, and we have experience of working with patients. So at the NIHR, we've been working with patients for over a decade. We have the ability to identify and contact patients through a national network in 30 different specialty disease areas, which includes oncology and with several subspecialty areas within oncology. In terms of independence and objectivity, we are not for profit. So our facilitation of these engagements really helps to remove some of the bias around them. And we also have existing national standardized frameworks for things like remuneration of patient involvement in these activities. So we have the ability to communicate with patients, and we use existing systems for handling and processing patient information that's pertinent to this service itself. So what does the patient engagement in clinical development service really do? We help companies, industry, to involve patients earlier in the development process. That helps to widen the scope for involvement overall. It enables the patient voice really to have greater impact, and as we said before, makes the trial designs as patient-friendly as they can be. So we really work to ensure that participants have a positive experience when they're involved in these engagements, and we help companies to gain a greater understanding of patient needs and requirements. So we want to help improve study design for patients. So this service really provides opportunities for study protocols to be tested, issues identified and resolved, and that's before the study is opened to recruitment at a site level. It allows for more tailored delivery. So the types of tests that were given, that were part of the trial, the number of visits that had been required, and the duration of those visits, as well as input into the informed consent and other patient-facing documentation for things like understandability, readability, and then discussion around how the results of the trial should be measured. So the impact that engagement had were that something that had been mandatory within the trial, which were lip biopsies, were made optional, because the patients fed back that those were considered to be very painful, and it was something that would have stopped them from being involved in the study otherwise. A symptoms diary was discussed, and patients fed back that they felt that that would really be a helpful way to monitor symptoms, and something that they felt would be really reassuring. So the fact that they would be reviewed by clinical staff and they would be able to talk through those with them. Also, something very interesting was that visual elements would be added to the informed consent document, and that was really to help those who learn in different ways. So those who didn't absorb information as well by just reading straight text the whole way would have some visual elements to help them understand what they were actually signing up for. And the other thing was taking into consideration one of the other symptoms of Sjogren's syndrome, which is fatigue. So it was the consideration of splitting site visits to incorporate shorter days rather than one longer day, perhaps 2 shorter days, to really address the fact that fatigue was really felt by those patients, and the patients gave that input in those sessions. So we've worked on kind of multiple engagements with over 200 patients in different areas, disease areas, since the service was piloted in 2018. We've also worked with a number of different companies several times in their reuse of the service, and we're seeing demand increase as well. We have partnered with Pfizer and have an ongoing engagement with them, and they helped us really to pilot the service. And some really nice feedback is in this quote: in all the clinical trials where Pfizer has partnered with UK patients through the NIHR, changes were made to the design, the documentation, and the delivery as a direct result. of that engagement. So we're proud of our existing partnerships and are continuing to expand our engagements across the different stages of the medicine's development cycle. And that kind of feedback is primarily the reason that we put the service together, and we're very thrilled to get that sort of feedback on this service. So basically, that's the end of our presentation. But just in summary, you know, patients are experts in their condition. Only they can really tell you how the balance of the ask of the trial, how you can balance the ask of the trial with the burden of living with the disease that they have. And engaging with patients in direct dialogue really helps us to get it right the first time and to design a patient-friendly protocol that will help you recruit patients and retain them. And if needed, the patient engagement and clinical development service can really help companies overcome some of the challenges that are associated with engaging with patients while really maintaining compliance with industry codes of conduct and internal guidelines. So we hope that you've learned something from this presentation and that you've enjoyed it. And we would welcome any questions and for you to get in touch if you have any questions in the future. Thank you very much.
Hi, Kim. Hi, Nicola. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. And it was really very interesting session. I hope everyone have enjoyed your session. I'll ask the audience that if they are having any questions, they can ask you in the chat or in the QA session. And we are having feedback for your presentation that it was really very informative presentation. And we do have one question in the chat as well. So I'll read it for you. How should small biotechnology companies engage your services?
Thanks. So if you go to the National Institute for Health and Care Research website, what I'll do is I'll put the link in the chat so everyone can see it. You can then go to the Patient Engagement and Clinical Development Service page, and all of the contact details that you need are there. So I can do that for you.
And to add to that, while Kim's doing that, this is very much a service for all companies. This isn't just large pharma. This is absolutely set up to help companies as a whole to come through that. And innovation and the smaller organizations are of a growing importance in terms of finding those obviously innovative treatments. So please do reach out if we can be of any assistance.
Okay, great. So thank you so much. And if we will get any questions further, if you guys have any questions, you can drop us in the chat and in the QA session, or you can directly contact to Kim and Nicola on LinkedIn, and you can reach their website as well. They have shared the link in the chat. So we have enjoyed your session. Thank you so much for being here and adding value. We are really honored to have you here.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.